Celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary, so I took her on a romantic trip to South Carolina. Oh, right? Well, the truth is I was assigned to cover the Marshall-Clemson football game, so I took her with me. So we celebrated our anniversary with 80,000 of our closest friends. You were there, all right? Yeah, of course you were. You came to celebrate. You'll really like this then, I think, because we're going to talk a little football today. I see some eyes going, oh no. If you don't know football, don't worry. You don't have to know X's and O's and cover 2 and 42 trap and all that kind of stuff. You don't need to know any of that stuff to get the gist of this sermon. But we'll use some football to set it up. You see, at the Marshall-Clemson game that day, September 4th, 1999, Marshall went in with high expectations. They were coming off a one-loss season. They were ranked in the top 20. This was a huge game for them. Clemson, this is a program that had won a national championship. They were a national power, a really good football team. And they were favored to beat Marshall. And you might recognize some of the Marshall players' names, the Chad Penningtons and Doug Chapmans and the like who were on that team, Andre O'Neal, and a whole bunch of guys went on to play in the NFL. They were really good, but they were an underdog going into Clemson. But they were only an underdog in the betting line in Las Vegas. In their own minds, they went in to win that game. And so they go into Clemson, and because they're the visiting team, they come out to warm up first. And they're out warming up on the field in front of the 80,000 people in that stadium, including the Marshall fans who were about 7 miles up in the sky, way up there, weren't you? Yeah, but they were loud. And so Marshall's warming up, and at Clemson, the Clemson locker room is up here on the top of a hill at this side of the stadium. And so the Clemson players come out of that locker room, and their fans see them, and they go nuts, and they cheer, and they rock and roll, and they're just all fired up. And the Clemson players, they rub a thing called Howard's Rock. It's for luck. That's a whole other sermon. But they rub Howard's Rock, and they charge down the hill to adoring fans. Well, the Clemson guys come out of the locker room. The fans have been watching for them. The Marshall players have been watching for them too. Because all of Marshall's players, when they saw the Clemson guys coming to line up to rub Howard's Rock, they all came up to midfield near the 50-yard line and started doing this. Yeah. Yeah, that was Clemson's reaction too. Yeah, with a few other choice words mixed in. So, yeah, Marshall's calling them down. Yeah, come on down here. Come on out and play. It's that kind of thing. So the Clemson players are just going nuts. They'd never had this happen to them before, as far as anyone knew. So the Clemson players come charging down that hill and dressed in their orange, and they run up to the 50-yard line. Didn't cross it, but they run up to the 50-yard line, and they're exchanging pleasantries with the Marshall players. Hi, good to see you. Happy, how college guys talk. So they're doing all of that. And then there's this one Clemson player. He's, if I remember correctly, a backup linebacker, a kid who wasn't going to play in this game. He wasn't going to see any minutes in this game. And he decided words weren't quite enough. So he started at this sideline where the Marshall players were and started giving the one-finger salute. And it's not, we're number one, it was another finger. All the way down the line of Marshall players, all the way to the other sideline. Well, yeah, the officials see this, the game officials, the referees, and they throw a flag. Unsportsmanlike conduct, number 58, whatever number he was on Clemson, 15-yard penalty. 15-yard penalty, yeah, on the kickoff, opening kickoff. So Marshall was receiving the opening kickoff. So rather than kick the ball from the 35, Clemson had to kick it from the 20. It's 15 yards, right? Even I can do that math. Yeah, 15 yards. So Clemson kicks off to Marshall. Marshall gets the ball, and they move down the field. A pass here and a run there, and they're moving the ball pretty well, but they get to the Clemson 22-yard line, and the drive stalls. It's fourth down, so they have a decision to make, to go for it or kick a field goal. Well, they decide to kick a field goal. And they send Billy Malashevich out. Billy, he played high school ball at Hurricane as an assistant coach out at Spring Valley. Real good guy, heck of a good kicker. So they send Billy Malashevich out to kick the field goal, which would be, since the ball's at the 22, would be 39 yards. A 39-yard field goal. Now, remember the 15-yard penalty, right? Gave Marshall an extra 15 yards. So if they didn't have that extra 15 yards, it wouldn't be kicking from the 39. They'd be kicking, the field goal attempt would be 52 yards. Now, Billy was a good kicker, but he didn't quite have that range. So if not for that penalty, Marshall never would have attempted the field goal. They would have just punted the ball to Clemson, gotten no points, given the ball back to Clemson. So instead, it's from the 22 to the 39. Billy kicks it. It's good. Marshall leads 3-0. How many points is a field goal? 3. Right. 3-0. Remember that. 3 points. Right. So the game goes back and forth, and the defenses on both teams are playing really well. It's a hot day, and the fans are really into it. It's a heck of a good game. Really good game to watch, and I had fun covering it. That comes down to the last drive of the game, essentially, and Clemson is ahead 10-6. Billy kicked another field goal in there when Clemson scored 10 points. So Clemson's up 10-6, and they're kicking off to Marshall again. And Marshall needs a touchdown because the field goal is worth how much? 3. So field goal does them no good, right? Because they're trailing by 4. So they need a touchdown to win. And they have the ball at their own 20, so they have to go 80 yards against Clemson and Atlantic Coast Conference officials. That's another sermon, too. They have to go 80 yards to score a touchdown to win this thing. So they start moving down the field. Pennington's throwing to this guy here and that guy there, and they have a crucial third down, and Chad makes this just tremendous pass, and James Williams, a wide receiver who went on to play for the Seattle Seahawks, he makes a great catch on the sideline, barely keeps his feet in bounds for first down, keeps the drive going. So they keep moving down the field, moving down the field, moving down the field, and the clock is winding down. And they get down inside the Clemson 5-yard line. So they line up for a play. John Wade, who went on to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a center, and he snaps the ball to Chad Pennington, who, of course, went on to play for the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets. And Chad turns around and he hands the ball to Doug Chapman, the running back who played for the Minnesota Vikings. And Doug follows Steve Shulo, the left tackle, who went on to play for the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah, you get it? There's some pretty good players on this team, huh? And Chapman follows Shulo into the end zone. Touchdown. Billy Malashevich comes out, kicks the extra point. Marshall leads 13-10. Clemson ran a couple plays, tried a long field goal that they had no chance of making, and it didn't make. So Marshall wins this game 13-10. How many points did they win it by? 3. How many points are a field goal? 3. Marshall got that first field goal, that first 3 points. Why? Because you remember the linebacker who came out and flipped the bird and cost his team 15 yards and 3 points? Little things. Because that young man couldn't or wouldn't control his emotions. He cost his team a football game. Yeah? Oh, but it gets better than that. You see, the season played out. 3 months later, Marshall's undefeated, goes to the Motor City Bowl, beats BYU 21-3, winds up ranked 10th in the nation, undefeated. Really great team. Tremendous season. They made my job easy covering them. I just changed the name of the opponent every week because they blew everybody out. It was pretty easy season for me. Clemson also went to a bowl game because they were a good team. They went to the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. Well, a good bowl. But had Clemson won one more game, just one more game, they would have gone to the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, no big deal. Atlanta to Jacksonville, it's not a big difference in distance. But the Gator Bowl paid out $1 million more than did the Peach Bowl. So if you look at it, Clemson needed to win one more game to go to the Gator Bowl, right? If they had beaten Marshall, they would have gone. But because that young man couldn't control or wouldn't control his emotions, he cost his team not only a win, but cost his team, his athletic department, and his school $1 million. Wow. Little things aren't so little anymore, are they? See, little things add up to big things. Now, John, if that had been us and our high school coaches, to this day, we'd still be running laps, wouldn't we? Yeah, I suspect that kid is too, somewhere in Clemson, South Carolina. You know? Oh, little things add up to big things. And part of our scripture for the day, Luke 16:10, one who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. Little things add up to big things, don't they? Oh, I'll only look at that website once. Oh, I'll only gossip just this one time. Just this one, and it's only a little thing. It's just a little white lie. That won't hurt at all. How many of those things remain little? Whew. They grow, don't they? Matthew 17:20, you see, little things aren't always bad. Little things also are good. They grow into big good things. Matthew 17:20. Jesus said to them, "For truly I say to you, if you have faith like a grain of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." And we picture a mountain, Mount Everest, falling into the Atlantic Ocean or something there. It goes deeper than that. Our personal mountains that we face. If our faith is as strong as a mustard seed, which is a little tiny seed, we can take those problems and cast them aside, out of our way. A mustard seed is a little thing, but it grows into a plant that's big enough that birds, not just little wrens and sparrows, big birds can perch in its branches. That's what the Bible tells us. Little things grow into big things in a good way. If our faith is just tiny, wow, the things God will accomplish through us and for us, it will grow in a big way and benefit others. James 3:4 says, "Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs." Anybody here ever been on a cruise? Yeah, a few of you. Great big old cruise ship. It's huge, isn't it? Yeah, it's controlled by a little bitty rudder. It can turn it into the peaceful, calm waters, or it can turn it into the stormy seas, which are treacherous. And that's another Bible story you've probably heard of. Jesus calmed storms. But what's your rudder? What little thing is guiding you? What's the most important thing in your life? What guides and directs you? And yeah, Jesus is no little thing. He's obviously big and he's key, but our faith can be little or it can be big. Whatever our rudder is, if it's Jesus, he guides us into the calm waters, usually. Sometimes he guides us into the storms. But he's there with us. And he controls where we go. Is your faith in him the size of a mustard seed, even, or is it less than that? That will determine a whole lot about how you do in the storm. You look at the big military ships, aircraft carriers. My son Jason was stationed on one, the Eisenhower, I believe it was. Massive ship with a huge number of planes and everything on it. All kinds of weaponry. Just tonnage upon tonnage. He had a little bitty rudder. Directed that ship wherever it went. That little bit of his life and the life of everybody on that ship depended on that rudder. Remember, little things control big things. Little things grow into bigger things, good or bad. Galatians 5:9, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. That's referring to bread. And essentially yeast makes a flat bread grow into a bigger loaf of bread, correct? I like bread, but I prefer brownies. Yeah. So if I made you a nice big chocolatey batch of brownies, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't you? You'd like to eat that, wouldn't you, most of you? But what if 2% of the ingredients was dog poo? I know, you're thinking, John, Mark, why do you let this guy preach? No, dogs, football and trees and dog poo. Yeah, but think about that. 2% of the brownies is dog poo. Would you eat it? No? Why not? It's only 2%. It's all 98% chocolatey goodness. No, still no. Oh, we'll cut it in half, 1%. What do you say now? No? I have some boys that used to be in my youth group that say, yeah, I'd eat it, sure, yeah. Middle school boys, wow. But no, of course you wouldn't eat it, right? Because the 1% spoils the whole pan of brownies. That's how sin is a lot of times. Because you throw 1% in and it spoils the whole life, or it can. Yes, we're forgiven. The Lord forgives us. But there are consequences too. You know, if we just go unchecked and there's, you know, we're letting that 1% in, you know, that's bad news. You don't want that. You know, that linebacker's middle finger was only about 3 inches long. Little thing on a 6'3", 250-pound linebacker. Cost him 15 yards on a 100-yard field. Cost him 3 points in a game when 23 were scored. Look at all those little things that added up to a Clemson loss that cost them $1 million later on. See, it took 3 months for that loss to really come back and bite them. But it did. And that's how our sin can work too. We do something now, and maybe the consequences aren't immediate, but somewhere down the line that comes back and bites us if we're not careful. If we allow little things to control our lives the way that the rudder controls the ship. James 3:5, so also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. Ooh, the tongue is a little muscle compared to a lot of them in our body, but man, can it do damage. Can it? Yeah. Left unchecked, left uncontrolled, oh man. Things will be said and heard that are like a fire. It spreads and it grows and it gets added to, and there's a whole big honking mess created from that. Oh, but the tongue too can be a good little thing when it's telling people about Jesus. Yeah. When it's speaking the word, when it's providing comfort and relief and condolences, and when it's helping to ease pain, it's a little thing that can have big, good consequences. It's all in how you use it. That linebacker could have used the other finger, couldn't he? Yeah. But the wrong use of his fingers cost him big. 1 Samuel 17:40, then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. David and Goliath, correct? Yeah. Goliath has a massive sword, heavy armor, and he's 9 foot plus tall. Big thing, right? Ferocious, booming voice. David's a scrawny, little shepherd boy, little thing. No big sword, just a little slingshot. And a little rock. That little rock, directed by a big God, hits Goliath, drops him to the ground. And David takes Goliath's own sword and beheads him. Wow. That little thing did some damage, huh? And we're talking David and the rock. David and the stone. Later on in his life, David glanced at Bathsheba. At first, just a little look. And then a little longer look. And then a little longer look. And those little looks added up to a big action that had huge consequences. Again, we serve a God of big forgiveness. Thank the Lord that we do, because those little things add up to big sins. Matthew 14:17. They said to him, we only have 5 loaves here and 2 fish. Now we know that the disciples were liars because they were fishermen. Yeah, that bass I caught, the picture of it alone weighed 7 pounds. That's how fishermen work, Yeah. But really, the fish fit in the basket. They couldn't have been very big, right? And the loaves, too. The basket wasn't huge. But all those little things, those little fish and those little loaves fed 5,000 men, and the equal amount of women and children, or probably even more. Little things in the hand of God become big victories. Yeah. So give your little things to the Lord. I talked about in Sunday school this morning, the grapes that fall from the tree. They go to the poor. The owner doesn't keep them. They go to the poor. And this wasn't part of the original sermon. I love it when God does this. You've experienced it. Yeah, so the poor can come and gather those little bunches of grapes and feed themselves. Little things again. Little parts of the crop on the fringes are reserved not for the owner but for passersby who are hungry. And just a little bit of the crop feeds a whole lot of people. Yeah. A little bit of Jesus can do a whole lot of good. So imagine what a whole lot of Jesus can do. Only 5 loaves and 2 fish. And not only did they feed everybody, they had 12 baskets of it left over. Little things add up to big things. And you think of the leftovers, 12. How many disciples were there? 12. They had enough crumbs to feed the disciples who worked the place, who handed out the food afterwards. Even God's little bitty leftovers come up big. Matthew 25:21, his master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Wow, how do we long to hear those words someday when we enter heaven, and we will. And whatever the Lord has given us to do here on earth, by comparison to what he does, it's little. Minute, itsy bitsy, teensy weensy little things. Imagine what he'll put us over in heaven. How glorious that will be. How big that will be. You think about it, little old me is in charge of something in heaven. Are you sure you want to do that, Lord? I mean, you know, I talk about dog poo brownies here. You really want to give me, put me in charge of something there? His grace is enormous. And we'll wrap up with Matthew 9:20 and 21. And behold, a woman who had suffered from a discharge of blood for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, him being Jesus. And for she said to herself, if only I touch his garment, I will be made well. Just his garment, the fringe. We talked about that too in Sunday school today. And that wasn't in the sermon either. What God does. I love it when he does that. I'm convinced that God sits up here sometimes and nudges Peter and says, hey, watch this. Yeah. And he does something that just blows us away, and they all stand up in heaven and they just laugh. I just picture it that way. But you look at this woman, she didn't even ask to be in front of Jesus begging and pleading with him. She didn't ask for a one-on-one. She didn't come to him with a medical report from the doctor over in Bethsaida or wherever it happened to be. She just wanted to touch the fringe of his garment, the little thread hanging down. She did, and boom, she was immediately healed. Little things. If you can get just a little bit closer to Jesus, you'll see big things happen. You'll see big power come from just touching the fringe of his garment. If you get just a little bit close, then you're going to want to get closer and closer and closer, and you're going to want more and more and more, and he's going to give you more. And you're going to experience God like you never have before. And it all starts with little things. Little things can go good or bad. I don't feel well on this church this Sunday. I'll sleep in this bed tomorrow. And then one day becomes 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks becomes 6 months, and then before you know it, you're straight down a path you don't want to be on. I know I need to pray, but I just don't have time right now. I'll get to it later. And later doesn't come. Little things. I know I should read the Word. I know that's how God communicates with me, but not right now. Only takes a few minutes. A little few minutes, a small piece of time. And when we neglect that, we miss big blessings. So we have a choice. Are we going to let our emotions rule us, like the Clemson linebacker did, and let little things take us down a bad path? Or are we going to look for little things and be thankful for small blessings that are really huge blessings? Or are we going to be a little blessing to other people? A little blessing. How can I pray for you today? A little blessing. Here's a meal. A little blessing. And however God has led you to do it, look for those little nudges. And you know what I'm talking about. You've been in that situation where God's telling you to do something. And it's usually not build an ark. It's usually a whole lot smaller than that. When you are in tune with those little things that God will have you do, it will make an eternal difference. And that's a big thing. Mm-hmm. All right. Questions or comments on little things? right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we praise your holy name. We thank you for your huge grace.